Good afternoon, everyone. Last session of the day, we will get ourselves going. Welcome, and it's been an excellent day so far. I'm sure everyone's already got lots to take away. My name's Michael Richardson. I'm chairing this session. We've got all the heavy hitters as speakers, so I don't need to do too much introduction. Just before I introduce Henry, I did note in the panel session this morning, I'm from South Australia, that I think Henry, South Australians are all special, and we've had a CDS for a very long time. Do we have any more South Australians in the room? Excellent, at least one more. Everyone knows that we've had a CDS since 1977, but not always the how and why. Just a 30-second anecdote. In 1975, a brash young politician called Peter Duncan was appointed the Attorney General in South Australia. In the 4 years he was Attorney General, he managed to abolish capital punishment, decriminalise homosexuality, criminalise rape and marriage, introduce some world-leading consumer protection laws, and a Racial Discrimination and Equal Opportunity Act. And he also found some time, after he'd been on a trip to the northwestern USA early in his tenure, to bring back a paper copy, because he brought back paper copies those days, of the Oregon Bottle Bill, which was introduced in Oregon as a container deposit scheme in 1971. And he managed, after a couple of years of battling, to get our scheme up in 1976, and it started on the 1st of January 1977. Anyway, that's enough anecdotes. Henry Anning, CEO Energy at Resource Co, is going to talk to us this afternoon about some of Resource Co's alternative fuel plants. Please welcome Henry.
Thank you. I walked right into that one, didn't I? But I certainly get plenty of grief from my South Australian colleagues being based in Brisbane as well. If you remember the national state comparison this morning, Queensland's coming second last in recycling rate, ahead of only Northern Territory. So again, I get plenty of grief around that. And I'll also say that anyone that went through probably their 20s in Australia, if you I imagine there are a lot of conversations like I had about how many cans do you think you could crush up, get in a car and drive to South Australia? And would it pay for the fuel or not, was the debate we had many times over the years. So a little bit about Resource Co, 30-year-old privately owned resource recovery company, Adelaide head office, everyone knows that now. About 1,000 people around Australia and Southeast Asia. We're one of the few companies we would say that are pure resource recovery companies. There's a lot of companies in our sector that still earn the majority of their EBITDA, profit, revenue from landfill, or the logistics to get waste to landfill. Whereas that's not us. We are very focused, and our revenue and EBITDA is all focused on resource recovery. I've got about 25 different types of recycling plants around Australia and Southeast Asia. And from a carbon perspective, which I'll touch on later as well, I've been heavily involved in carbon markets of a range of different forms and versions over the last 30 years in generating both ACCUs for sale as well as just generating abatement by reducing emissions in a number of ways. Again, we operate in 4 areas, so what we call recycling and waste, but sort of is more commonly called concrete crushing. We've got major facilities in South Australia and East and West Melbourne in that space. We own TyreCycle, so the largest tyre recycler in the country. We collect about 70,000 tyres a day around the country and have processing plants in all states. And that's everything from bike tyres, car tyres, four-wheel drive tyres, up to 3 to 4 tonne mining tyres. So we recently opened Australia's first dedicated mining tyre recycling plant in the Pilbara. So that's dealing with those 3 or 4 tonne tyres, which is a whole different ball game. And then our soil reuse and recycling business all around the East Coast. That part of the business, they describe themselves as soil speed dating. So they're trying to match where soil's coming off major infrastructure projects or property development with where soil's needed on major infrastructure projects or property development, and make the match between the two as efficiently as possible. And then our energy business, which is what I'll focus on today, producing alternate fuel from dry C&D and C&I waste, and particularly obviously with the audience going to focus on how councils are relevant and how we are relevant to councils in producing alternate fuel as well. In terms of footprint, quite East Coast heavy. You can see our tyre facilities over on the West Coast and also our fuel plant in Malaysia. We have our alternate fuel plants in Adelaide open since 2009. That's a JV with Veolia. It was with Suez prior to the acquisition, but a JV with Veolia. We've got our Sydney facility, which opened in 2018. We've got our Brisbane facility, which opened in October last year. And we have early stage development on a plant in Melbourne, which we're keen to progress with to sort of complete the East Coast support for our customers. In terms of producing alternate fuel, and again, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, it's a lot more than just grinding rubbish. Anyone can buy a shredder and put rubbish into it. We have to think like a manufacturer. We're making a fuel for a cement kiln customer. It's $1 billion asset. So they're putting that into their asset, and generally we're trying to solve for calorific value, ash, moisture, chlorine, and particle size. Those sort of the big things. And so we have to solve for those specs and work our way back in terms of the processing, but also what we accept at the front end in terms of materials. Drilling in a bit more into household waste, and again, we've obviously seen these graphs, so I won't stay here too long, but MSWs, it's hard. And certainly once you get outside, yellow bin, which Garth will talk about a bit more, you get outside FOGO or GO, depending on where you are and what's happening. What's left in the council stream is hard, but it's also not just red bin. It's a few other things as well, which I'll touch on. So in terms of the dry streams that we get involved in or can potentially get involved in, council hard rubbish, curbside, bulky waste, goes by a few different names in different jurisdictions. Anyone that was in Louise's presentation from MRA just before the break, she obviously spoke about that in some detail, and the different collection systems. We also get involved in working with councils around their resource recovery facilities, so where they're accepting waste either from the community or from C&D, C&I streams, and the dry components of those. Not all councils have resource recovery facilities or transfer stations, but a lot do as well. And then MRF residuals. And so in some jurisdictions, particularly our Adelaide plant, we actually accept MRF residuals and we're licensed to do that. We can make those as well into alternate fuel. So in terms of council hard rubbish or bulky waste, so in Joe's 2024 National Waste Report, estimated at about 500,000 tonnes per annum. I think Louise's data earlier was closer to 1 million tonnes. Roughly I'd say that's somewhere between sort of 5 and 15% of council waste volumes, depending on where it falls there. Again, if there's anyone in the room that's got better data than that, they want to share, happy to hear it. But it's not a major proportion of, it's not over 50% obviously of household generation, but it's not nothing either. And if there's a solution for that 5 to 15%, then it can have some impact on council diversion rates as well. Again, lots of, the key components from a fuel perspective is, particularly timber. So timber that isn't going to be recycled in any way. So, furniture can be reused, it should be reused. If timbers are clean and they can be mulched or go to a higher order use, that's where they should go. But if they're going to go to landfill, they're much better off going to alternate fuel than going to landfill. So generally from our perspective, what this requires, depending on the collection system and how it's working, is some form of separation, because there's obviously a lot of other stuff in bulky waste that we couldn't take, either from a licence perspective or from a fuel quality perspective. So, the solutions we've seen for that to work is if bulky waste is going to a waste, to a council's resource recovery centre, it can be separated there. If it's a truck collection system, then again, I think some councils have potentially run multiple trucks. They might run a metal truck, they could run a dry truck or a sort of a fuel truck effectively, and then a residuals truck. Or if it's all collected on one truck, it goes back to some sort of either council or third-party site, transfer station, for separation, and then the components that can go to alternate fuel can then be separated out at that site and taken to an alternate fuel plant as an option. And the landfill diversion that we generally get, which I'll touch on later, is in the order of 95% of what comes into our fuel plants is diverted from landfill. So our target sort of competitor is landfills. It's material that would otherwise go to landfill, and we generally get a 95% diversion of that. So there's a pretty good story there. In terms of council resource recovery facilities, again, the key thing from a lot of recyclers' perspective is, as we've touched on, separation. Is what level of separation can we get, and how do we get it? So, if something's being positively picked, you go to some council sites and there might be 10 different skip bins or hook bins and different materials put in each one. That's obviously more of a positive picking and generally leads, from our experience, to very clean streams. Or I guess if material's tipped into some sort of pit, that's where it gets more complex. If you end up with pute and non-pute material being tipped in a pit, we've worked with councils around some solutions, such as even putting a divider in the pit, having one end as pute, one end as non-pute. But the more mixed the material is, the more complex it is, the more expensive it is, and the fewer resource recovery options there are. So, thinking about those sort of either infrastructure or logistics is critical. It obviously, you can end up with many parties involved in the conversations as well. Some councils might own the Resource Recovery Centre, but they might have a long-term contract with a third-party provider to actually manage that Resource Recovery Centre. And so then there's obviously complex contractual discussions in terms of, that wasn't part of the contract in terms of separating these materials, but they're the conversations that have to happen, either mid-contract or between contracts, to allow a range of different resource recovery solutions. Mattresses is something we actually get a bit of as well into our fuel plants, generally on a pre-shredded basis, and ideally with the metal already removed. I think there's some other conversations over the course of the couple of days around mattresses. I noticed the Bedding Stewardship Council's outside as well. But we find councils get quite a lot of mattresses. I think one we were talking to the other day gets something like 50,000 a year mattresses in, so pretty significant numbers. Landfillers hate them, for a whole bunch of reasons. But if they are shredded, it is something that the residual sort of textile and fabric and foam material does make good alternate fuel. So mattresses is something that we do deal with councils quite a bit. So got a short video as well in terms of one of our partnerships with councils and the solutions. I will.
I'm Peter Winley, Coordinator for Waste Operations for Shoalhaven City Council. It's a large regional LGA. We have 10 waste and recycling facilities throughout the LGA. Lots of science and lots of research goes into the things that we do, and the outcome is fantastic. There is no such thing as waste. There's only opportunities. Opportunities for a better result, especially for our environment.
Shoalhaven City Council is at the forefront of the circular economy. And why are we at the forefront? Because we are trying desperately to get as much stuff out of landfill as possible. And we want to see all of those fantastic resources that normally get buried or have been buried in the past taken out, and getting all the good bits from it, as much good bits as possible, and repurposed.
Household waste only makes up about a third of the waste in Australia. The commercial industrial sector and the construction demolition sector also make up roughly a third each. What we do here at Cleanaway Resource Co is we take residual construction, demolition and commercial industrial waste. We put those through an advanced manufacturing facility to extract from that material all the recyclables that we can, and then the balance is used as an energy source, as a solid fuel for high energy users such as cement kilns. The other fantastic outcome here is that we provide those fuels to high energy users that are typically using fossil fuels. And by using a waste-derived fuel, they're able to significantly reduce their emissions as well.
We need to find solutions to these problems, and we need to be able to recycle everything we can, repurpose everything we can. And elegant solutions like this PEF, where 2/3 of what would ordinarily go to landfill can be an alternative fuel source. It's an exciting time, and it's great to be a part of it.
Just sorting out materials into recycling components and sending them off to third parties never actually worked. So we wanted to create materials that were in demand. There's so many new emerging technologies that produce waste, and we need to be on the front foot and be able to address that.
You know, setting out on a journey for sustainable circular economy in isolation is impossible. We have to develop partnerships, and I think having really good, strong relationships with people is critically important.
It's essential that we have a partnership with companies like Resource Co to make sure that the things that we can't deal with locally have got a pathway to be recovered. When you can't do it yourself, you've got to hold the hand of somebody else and say, come on, we're on this journey with you, because we know that the expertise that sits with people like Resource Co is important to us getting the maximum amount of life out of our landfill. My message to other mayors in other cities is to have a go, because if we don't actually have a go, we're never going to get anywhere. All we're going to do is continue to dig holes and throw away valuable resources.
And that waste that you would chuck in the bin or in your yellow bin or whatever, it's a product. It can be turned into something better that's useful. You can go back at the end of the day and say to your friends and family, I'm doing something good for the world. I'm doing something good for the environment.
We've finished with what we always used to do. Now we're doing something different.
It's everyone's responsibility to know where their waste is really going.
You know, this council's really willing to go on the journey, so I think our future's bright.
We've worked closely with Shoalhaven for a number of years now. I don't know if Peter's in the room. I know he's at the event. Yep, he's down the back. So, you know, again, if you wanted to have a chat to Peter about what they're doing, I guess there's been a couple of key changes since the video was made a couple of years ago. There's been a local government election. The mayor's no longer the mayor. Still working closely with Shoalhaven, and the other change is Resource Co bought Cleanaway out of the asset as a JV partner, so it's now entirely a Resource Co asset. You know, I mentioned the diversion earlier, so this is sort of general information, particularly around our Sydney fuel plant. So the material coming in, as I said, is landfill diversion, and is landfill diversion. It would all go to landfill. We get about 95% diversion on that. So we get a 5% roughly residual. We get about 70%, 2/3-ish as fuel. We get dirt or fines, aggregates, and steel as other products we're able to recover from that. Which would also just otherwise disappear into the hole. I've mentioned cement kilns a couple of times today, so just to touch on that a little bit. You know, cement kilns have been using alternate fuel from dry material for decades, both in Australia and even longer in the likes of Europe. You know, Australia only has 4 cement kilns left: Adelaide, Brighton, and Adelaide. Cement Australia in Gladstone, and then Railton in Tasmania, and Boral at Berrima. In Asia, there's in the order of 200 cement kilns operating. So a lot of the fuel we produce is exported to those cement kilns on an energy basis, and I guess we fully control the end-to-end process, so we know where every bale goes to every customer through that process. In terms of why cement kilns, they, as it says here, they burn very hot. They burn long, so they have a very long residence time. The emissions are cleaned by the limestone, and all of the ash ends up as an inert material in the clinker. So even in Australia, cement kilns are used basically as hazardous waste disposal centres as well. So an alternate fuel for them is very simple and very safe. You know, and Boral today is using this fuel across the road from residents in Berrima. So obviously the New South Wales EPA have worked closely with them through that process. A number of benefits as well as the landfill diversion. So from a carbon perspective, generally speaking, every tonne of waste, the dry C&D and C&I or bulky waste we divert from landfill achieves 1 tonne of carbon reduction in terms of methane avoidance, and that's net of a landfill gas capture rate. And so we receive ACCUs under the alternative waste treatment method for that. At the other end, every tonne of fuel a cement kiln uses to replace coal achieves about 1 tonne of carbon reduction as well. So significant benefits from a carbon perspective on both sides of these sort of facilities. So that's all. Thank you for your time. Happy to take questions. Are we doing now or at the end? At the end?
Thank you very much, Henry. We will save questions to the end. We're already ahead of time. Garth Lamb is the Chief Development Officer at Regroup. Garth is going to talk to us about the outlook for recycling solutions and the trends affecting the sector. Welcome, Garth.
Thank you very much, and it's always exciting to be here and get to see all you folk again. So it's been a little while since I've been here, so I just wanted to touch on some of the things that we've been up to and where we see the actions happening and where the opportunities and what are the big trends facing us. Too fast. Henry said there's not too many companies that just do resource recovery. We're another one of them. So that is 100% our focus. So we like to point out we're the only company that designs, builds, owns and operates recycling facilities. Right now we're servicing about 5 million people across about 40 local government areas, and we do about 20 million 10-cent refunds every week. So the two very busy parts of our business. In terms of, it was a simple instructions where to point that, and yet, there we go. So in terms of our business pillars, we talk about the sort of the three parts of our group, and I just want to touch on some of the recent things we've been up to the last couple of years since we've stood up here, and set a bit of a context for our outlook of the world. There has been a lot going on. So if I start in that middle one, the recycle part of our business, which is where we do our MRFs and our FOGO as well. Awesome Sunshine Coast MRF is up, fully operational. We've built in Hallam in Victoria a container and plastic sorting facility, which is humming along. That was a very interesting project in the fact that we had about 3 months to have that up and running ahead of the start of the Victorian Container Deposit Scheme. We've stepped in to operate the Auckland MRF in New Zealand. That is a big Hura of a facility. It's 130-odd thousand tonnes, and funnily enough, there's not a spare one anywhere else on the island, so it's a fairly sensitive asset, which is going very well. And we've just set up a new transfer station in the ACT. At the moment, the engineering team have just finishing off one of the smallest advanced processing facilities at Mount Isa. They're currently doing a bunch of upgrades in some of our other facilities, Chinder and Dandenong right at the moment, and in the middle of building another large, very high-tech MRF, a greenfield facility in southeast Queensland, which hasn't been announced yet, but you'll probably guess where it is when you see the yellow dot in a few moments. The returner team also, one I wanted to touch on. So the Victorian CDS is only 18 months old. We've already introduced some new technology that didn't exist at the time when we put that tender together. But it's been the story that we keep finding. There is lots of new technology becoming available, and being able to keep that focus on continuous improvement and what's going on. So there is a lot of cool stuff happening. That's where our facilities are currently. So the yellow ones are MRFs and beneficiation plants. There's one lonely green dot, which is a FOGO facility down in Shell Harbour, and the purple meningococcal rash is the return at depots, which are the ones that have humans in them. For those of you with very good eyesight, you'll see that Canberra dot, that yellow dot there, which was the first of Regroup's yellow dots, has been downgraded to a transfer station. For those of you who weren't aware, we had a horrific fire there on Boxing Day in 2022. A really, 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 really unpleasant experience for everyone involved. To have a complete loss of that facility, and I tell you, after getting through all of that, we're now 2.5 years down. Very proud that we've managed to keep all the material out of landfill. The only way to have been able to do that, we've had to very quickly pivot to running that facility as a transfer station. It really highlighted for us, and I think everyone's aware of the increasing risks. That was a lithium-ion battery that took out that facility. And I think everyone's aware of how often these fires are happening, how big a risk they are to our facilities. Real reminder, again, as if anyone in this room needs another reminder, that what we do is essential. You can't turn off the bins, and it's pretty fragile. There's a a lot of ways for things to go sideways pretty quickly. And that single site dependency would be a really, 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 really scary place to be. So you either need a really good network of your own, or you need some really good friends, and ideally you have both. And one of the things that I love about our sector, and there's many things I love about our sector, but we do a pretty good job of working together in times of crises and trying to put the community first. So thank you to everyone who was involved in that, and happy to say our team are now happily, as of the last couple of months, relocated to a new dedicated transfer station, no longer operating off the burnt out husk of the old site, and ACT is moving ahead with its plans for the new MRF there. So at some point that'll be restored. I talk about some of the trends in the designs of where we're at. This is the Sunshine Coast MRF that I mentioned. I got actually got a bit emotional last year. We won a cool award for that, an industry award, and I do get a bit emotional on some things, but that one in particular, no one outside of our room, outside of our sector, realises how bloody hard it is to actually establish new infrastructure in our space. Like, it is really, 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 really hard work, and every time something actually gets delivered on the ground, there are teams and teams of people that have worked tirelessly to overcome a ridiculous number of barriers right the way through the chain to allow that to happen. So, we should be very proud every time we do deliver something, because it is really, really, really hard work. And I think, winning the Facility of the Year award last year from our peers was an emotional moment for me. It is something that we work really hard to do, and we're very proud of what we do achieve when we get things right. So, MRFs. This is the key bits I wanted to talk around. It is not getting easier out there. It's getting cooler. Like, they are really cool facilities. They're a lot of fun. They're much more interesting to take people around than the olden day MRFs. But they're pretty hard work. There's a lot of technology out there. Not all of it's suitable for all applications, and certainly we're seeing that achieving modern market standards and moving up to this. I know when it's written down on a piece of paper, like in a technical spec, it seems like these things aren't a huge difference. Like, we've had examples where 95% recovery and 98% purity is the. We've independently passed that from verified people. That is a really, really, really hard bar. When someone comes along and goes, oh, but we think we could do better, and let's make that 98% or 99%, and these things that, if they're not really attached to the reality of how hard these things are, that law of diminishing returns is very, very, very real, and going up from there is really hard. That's a step change from where things were at previously, and it's really hard work to get there if you're being honest about how you're going to get there. We are increasingly seeing that there's a requirement in there also for some downstream, more specialist processing equipment to get to the really high requirements. So, for example, in the glass space, we've got a lot of experience making glass into sand. We would much prefer to get it back into bottle to bottle wherever we can. Obviously, transport dynamics are making it a bit of a challenge for some regional areas. But to get it back into a bottle-to-bottle, glass beneficiation type facilities, you require a lot of capital. Whenever you require a lot of capital, you require a lot of tonnes to make it work. So you end up with a centralised facility. I wanted to go through some of the sort of capital benchmarks. It says a few people have been around the industry for a long time. Once upon a time, the standard rule of thumb that people had was you'd think about sort of $1 million per tonne of installed capacity in a MRF. I just went through some publicly available numbers. So this is covering buildings, plant and equipment for a couple of key projects that we know a little bit about. So Cairns MRF back in 2021, that's a 15 tonne an hour facility, and that came in, the public figure on that's $14.3 million. Also in 2021, Adelaide MRF, 25 tonne an hour, and that's at a $24 million sticker price. So both of those are kind of in that, $1 million per tonne of installed capacity. You then step forward a couple of years, Sunshine Coast MRF, which is very similar to Adelaide, except it came, after the COVID dramas, or in the middle of the COVID dramas, and with a few additional upgrades, particularly on the glass treatment. So it has a cullet recovery line on it. It's 25 tonne an hour. 2023, it's $40.5 million. Now, the little one that I mentioned at the start of this, Mount Isa has been publicising its project. It's a 3 tonne an hour facility at $20 million, which is a very expensive. And I've got to say that's fantastic. I think it's awesome that that community decided that it's not just about the cost. They saw a value in doing this locally. At the same time, I sit here and I go, we used to build lots of regional small recycling facilities. I don't see us building a whole heap of them in the future at those sort of numbers. That is a really hard barrier to get over when you're talking about very, very large numbers for a couple of thousand tonnes. Overall trends we're seeing, it is consolidating towards existing facilities, upgrading existing facilities compared to the cost of going and starting again. Not to mention the complexity and the time. We've talked a lot about planning constraints in New South Wales, but it is really, really, really hard work to actually get a new facility up across the line. So getting the most out of existing facilities, the upgrades and the opportunities to improve on what's there and build on what's there and avoid some of that additional cost and complexity is certainly one of the trends that we're seeing and one of the things that we're doing across our business. So with all that cool technology, there's some exciting parts of that. So across all of those facilities, and we've got multiple optical sorters. That Sunshine Coast facility has 7 optics in there. It is gathering a huge amount of data. So there is more rich information than we've ever had before around what is actually in the waste stream, how we're recovering it. I don't think that we're using that data to its fullest extent now, but as I look ahead, in an AI-driven world, having access to that information and that data, I'm sure it's going to help us do better over the future. Some of the other bits that are great, fantastic when you're taking a community tour, robotics. Robotics are certainly one of the sexiest things you can put into a MRF these days. Not necessarily super efficient right at the moment. We see a really good role for them in quality control areas. So we're using them in our facilities on the QC. That is, I don't know if anyone's ever worked in a MRF, but in terms of mind-numbing, horribly boring jobs that you'd rather automate and have the safety benefits, sitting there just before the baler, making sure that you're getting those last couple of bits that weren't supposed to be in the material. That's a great role for robots. Trying to use them, everyone tries to look at the front end. How could we automate pre-sort to attack batteries or pull out some of this other contamination? That's a really, really, really hard role for a robot. That's not. I don't think that's going to happen in the very near future, which is why we'll get to the need to make sure we're improving what's actually coming into our facilities. In terms of the plastic stream, obviously a lot of focus there. I think the future is going to be largely around food grade versus non-food grade. So currently in these facilities, we sort to 5 different plastic types, but within that, or 5 grades. But we have a HDPE coloured, HDPE clear. I think that we'll stop talking about colours and more about the food grade PET, the food grade HDPE versus the non-food grade materials. That's certainly. I have the pleasure of sitting in some of the UPCO meetings, and that's certainly where the brand owners are looking, and how do we change the packaging design to make that easier. I think that linking up at the front and the back end of the chain is a really important thing. The other one I forgot to mention, after having talked about a horrific fire, in those MRFs now, we're seeing the fire control systems are probably like 10% of your capital costs. That didn't exist 5 years ago. No one was putting sprinklers underneath every conveyor and putting cannons throughout and having a ridiculous amount of water storage. It's one of those major cost increases, but the flip side of that, we need to get our insurance for our facilities, and that's pretty hard and pretty expensive these days as well. I feel like I just made that all sound really hard and terrible. It's fun. Like, there's lots of really cool things happening. It's just really, really expensive and complicated. Yeah, it is complex. It is getting more and more complex. It is getting more and more expensive. That said, it is achieving a better outcome and it's doing a better job than what we were able to do before. So I guess that's a good thing. Right, MRFs aren't getting easier, but container returns are getting easier. I love CDS container returns. I love them as part of our business. Oop, didn't mean to press that. Anyway, you get to watch this on loop for a few times. I love them for what they are for themselves, but more to the point, I love the demonstration of that product stewardship principle. I love that we have these schemes that are mandatory product stewardship, so there's no free riders. Everyone who's supplying these materials into the market are paying an appropriate cost to have them recovered in a best practice way. And I look at what we've achieved collectively in these programs. It is phenomenal, the step change we've done. The example I always come back to is aluminium cans. Everyone knew an aluminium can was recyclable, of the one thing that everyone knew. And yet we doubled recovery rates by putting a 10% refund on them. It's not just about education. We have to actually provide some proper incentives for people to get these things. So I look at CDS as a great role model for a whole slew of other products that shouldn't be in the bins because they're too dangerous or they're too valuable or they're too important. And looking at how do we build out these dedicated streams, how do we leverage more off things like these depots. To this video, I should have actually mentioned it before you knew what you were looking at. This is really cool. We work very closely with Machinex. They're a Canadian-based technology supplier. We've been running the CDS and the ACT since 2018, and we've been through a lot of different iterations of technology through that couple of years as we have across our networks. But we had a sort of a dream list of this is what we'd like to achieve. What we want, the ultimate convenience for customers would be just tip bulk containers in, have them super quickly, super accurately counted and verified, and worked with Machinex to bring that to life. So the container, which I love the Canadians, but their naming conventions aren't that fantastic, to be completely honest. Anyway, the AI in the middle is the hint. It is a very smart bit of kit. I think we're saying that it does 600 containers a minute. It actually will do up to 1,500 containers a minute. You just got to get the back end to keep up with the front end. It is phenomenally cool bit of kit and really good. So it's not barcode dependent. It's got a database in there that's allowing it a broader range of ways that it verifies things. You can't quite see it, but you see little green ticks and little red crosses if there's anything that's not eligible as it comes through there. The cool thing about AI, just to talk about some of these technology systems, one of the really cool things is you have to train them. Like, we had to take its little brain to Canberra for a couple of months and for it to sit there and look at what does every eligible container look like. Once you've trained it once, though, it's a copy paste to the next one. It's unlike a worker who comes in and then on Thursdays they're sick and you're trying to train someone else again. Once you've gone through the process of training this, it doesn't forget. It just gets smarter, and you can just replicate that again, which is the same as we see with all the other technologies. The more you're using them, the more efficient you can tweak them and get them moving. I feel like I'm running long. I'll pick up the pace, even though you're being very polite. Thank you. So look, overall, when I sort of look at the three parts of the chain as I see it, I'm really positive about the shifts that are happening with brand owners. I think that, and I've been very critical of APCO over many years, but I think that the direction that they're on at the moment is really exciting for us. I think that, I hope that the election result allows them to actually get into that a bit quicker. It's been stalled. I think Michael gave us a good reminder that amazing things can happen in 3 or 4 years if you get the right people incentivised to do stuff. So I hope that we're about to hit a period where we actually get some important stuff done, because it's a bit frustrating when we're all in a hurry and things aren't moving. So I'm positive and optimistic, and I think that the front end is realising the shared responsibility and the fact that we can't just do it at the end of the pipe. They need to be involved in this system as well. I think that in the middle, I think that we and others are demonstrating. I think as a sector, we've taken step change forward. I think we're doing better with the materials that we've got, and I think that how we're doing it and what we do, I think we're getting better and better at that. That said, I think we've got a big issue with the community. I think we've had a big trust issue with the community. And I think there's a lot more work to do. I'm very lucky to be talking before Anne and Rachel, but I'm sure that we'll hear some data-driven. I will say that Garth's observations is that it's getting worse. It's certainly not getting better. If the most positive view would be that it's plateauing, I think our contamination rates are getting worse. I think our yields of recycling are getting worse. We're seeing less volume and more of the bad material coming through to us. So we have to get better at doing that. We have to get simpler education messages. We have to get, as a sector, we have to do a better job, because especially as these things get more complex and more expensive, we can't afford to lose them. We can't keep having dangerous items thrown at us, and there's a real need to join that loop back up. I think we've kind of dropped the ball on that as a broader sense. I know there's a lot of people, individuals and councils that are doing a great job, but to me it feels like it's slipping. And I think that partnership, shared responsibility part is really, really, really important. And we need to get back to all of us being aligned at trying to make this better. Which, just quietly, contracts. We need to stop having silly contracts that don't create that alignment, that we have contracts that actually reflect that and have everyone aligned and heading in the same direction. Contracts where people are saying, well, all care, no responsibility, deal with whatever we throw at you and good luck, don't help take us forward. We need to have proper alignment in how we're doing this if we're going to actually make headway and get things better. So that's it. We like partnerships, and thank you.
Thanks, Garth. That was sensational. Up next, we have Anne Prince, Director of APC Waste Consultants, going to talk to us about new systems and new challenges. Welcome, Anne.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're still here. That's a really good sign. So I am going to touch a little bit on new recycling systems, current opportunities, as well as some new opportunities. When I get the magic sticker. So first of all, data. So this is what our data shows is a typical composition of a red bin. We've got about 31% loose food, about 7% recyclable containers, about 1.5% of that is glass. We've got 7% sort of soft plastics, and if you think this is by weight. So if we've got 7% by weight of soft plastics, imagine the volume that takes up. And we've got about 5% of textiles, predominantly used clothing. So the current opportunities we have is what to do with what's in the red bin. So 12% of that, paper, cardboard and the containers, should be in the recycling bin, but aren't. 2.5% of that should be in the garden organics bin, but it's not. 1% of it, which is the e-waste and the hazardous, shouldn't be in the bin at all, including the batteries. And we've got about 31% loose food, and we've got combined, if you include the other 12% of containerised food and liquid, we've got 43% that should be or could be in a FOGO bin, which is where we're all heading. So FOGO, we're about to see the big green wave. There's a whole session about FOGO, so I'm not going to talk about that at all. Only to say that you hear a lot about FOGO and some best practice results, which are how much food is being diverted to FOGO. And out of the 19 recent audits that we have done, that the data's up here, 2 of them are getting 75% recovery, which is fantastic. One of them is getting 8%. One of them's getting 15%. That's not what you hear about. So my message to you is our average is 34% food recovery. So if you're in council and you're doing modelling about how much diversion you're going to get from a FOGO service, I think you need to calibrate it down a bit, because you can get to 75, but it's hard, it's long, it's arduous, and you need a lot of tenacity to get there and a big budget. So I don't want to be the dampener in the room, I'm just trying to be the realist. Whoops. Glass recovery. There was another session in another stream this afternoon. Alex from Tonkin and Taylor did a whole session on the purple bin in Victoria. So for their wisdom, they have decided that they've mandated that there should be a fourth bin for glass only. Most councils are using a 120 litre bin, and it's mostly collected on a monthly basis. 22 councils so far have introduced the purple bin. Most of those are in the regional and rural areas, 18, and only 4 of them are in the metro area. If you're in the Alex session, she also spoke about the fact that 22 councils have joined forces to go back to government to say there was a regulatory impact statement that was done with a whole lot of scenarios and data, and now they're using real-world data provided by those 22 councils, have come up with a new average council, and surprise, surprise, their recovery is not as great, the cost is much more, their emissions, greenhouse gas emissions that are greater than what was anticipated, and between when the government mandated the fourth bin for glass, and now we've had the introduction of a CDS program in Victoria, and with the interest in harmonisation of CDS programs nationally, it is highly likely in the not too distant future that New South Wales and the other states, including Victoria, will follow Queensland and add wine and spirit bottles to the 10-cent redemption, which means even more material will come out of the yellow bin because it has a value. So if you're thinking, government or anybody, about going to a fourth purple bin, I think you need to look at the Tonkin and Taylor presentation because I think it's very enlightening. So looking at the recycling data for New South Wales and how this might play out, currently one of the rationales for the purple bin in Victoria was to increase glass recovery. So glass is only 1.5% of our current red bin, and it's 27% of our recycling bin. If we take that glass out of the recycling bin and put it in a new bin, we've already got contamination at 20%, to go to Garth's point. You take 27 or 25 or 20% out of that bin, what's going to go up is going to be contamination. So the contamination that we see in yellow bins ranges from 6 to 36%. And when you've got 36% contamination, you haven't got a recycling bin, you've got a garbage bin. So we need to do everything we possibly can to manage contamination and not add to it in any way, shape or form, or the MRFs will be seriously not happy. So the two new opportunities I think that we have is to talk about textiles. And this is in connection with MSW. So 80% of all textiles are going to landfill, about 800,000 tonnes. It's been reported. And the current options that we have is you can donate your good quality clothing, linen towels to an op shop for resale, reuse. The poor quality material, the unwearables, some councils, and I live in one that is, I'm very fortunate, has a textile recovery program at the transfer stations and the landfill, so I'm in Shoalhaven Council, or you can put in your curbside bin. And so we see about 5% from that earlier slide, the very first graph I showed, 5% of the red bin is textiles, and about 1.5% of the recycling bin is also textiles. So people are doing the wish cycling. They'd like it to be recycled, so they're putting it in the bin, but in the recycling bin, but all it's doing is adding to the contamination. And there's about 20 kilos per household per annum of textile waste that is generated from the data that we have. Oops. So, oops, I've gone too many. Oops. So the bag in a bin has been a concept that's been around for maybe 10 or so years. The idea being to give householders a special bag, which is highly identifiable, which can go in the curbside bin and be extracted at the MRF that only holds a particular commodity. So 10 years ago, Handy Bin Services, who have the contract here at Coffs Coast, did a pilot study on what would happen if we gave the householders a plastic bag and asked them to put their good quality used clothing and toweling and linen into that. So the trial was to determine the weight, the volume, the participation, the type, the quality and the contamination by doing that. It was collected by the same truck that did the yellow bin, so people were instructed to either put the bag in the bin or if there was no room in the bin to put it beside the bin, and the normal collection vehicle took it. And they did a partnership with an op shop who came in, sorted all of the material to determine what the quality, the type, and if or not it was saleable. So of that results, 42% of what they collected in these trial areas were saleable, 35% was of an export quality that could go overseas, 10% of it was rags, not rage, and 14% of it was waste. So the learnings from that study, now this is a decade ago, and this is really probably before or at the cusp of when fast fashion really started to take off. So if you did this trial now, the numbers might be slightly different, and I would think probably higher, not lower. But the community absolutely embraced the program in these pilot projects, or these pilot areas. On average, they put out 3 bags per annum, and each bag weighed about 4 kilos, or 3.7 kilos. 50% of the bags were in the bin and 50% of the bags were beside the bin. So one of the learnings from that is that most or half the households had no spare capacity in their recycling bin, so you needed to upsize their bin to a 360 litre to be able to accommodate a project such as this. The bags were easily removable at the MRF, there was no problems with those. There was a breakage of about 10% from either the seams breaking from compaction or from people trying to push too much into the bag. They did need to do some truck rerouting because of the volume of material that was coming through in the truck. And the key outcome was that the charities couldn't keep up with the volume of material that was coming through. So the trials were so successful, the bit I missed, the trials were so successful that Coffs Coast put the textile collection into the curbside contract. So that all of a sudden the bags and the curbside program was available to all, and then the op shops were overcome with how much material was available to them, and so supply and demand mismatched each other, and regrettably the project was ceased because the op shops couldn't cope with the inundation of material. And at that time there was no other real alternative as to where some of this material could go. So the learnings, so what Shoalhaven Council have done is looking at a variety of outlets for the material based on the waste hierarchy and looking at making sure they've got options of where the material can go. So learnings from Coffs Harbour they probably didn't even know about the Coffs trial, but they've made these alternative pathways available to themselves. So the first one is there is the reusable network. So if it's saleable, it goes through an op shop or it goes through the buyback centres at the waste transfer stations and landfills. It's repurposed by being exported where it's mechanically deconstructed and then remanufactured into blankets, camping mats, rugs, and a lot of those, for those that are regular op shoppers, we'll see a lot of the op shops now are storing or selling those as being new product made out of recycled textiles and fibre. And they're also including textiles that have no value into a process engineered fuel that is being then used for energy in cement kilns up in the Southern Highlands, along with mattresses, lounges, plastics, timbers and foams. So about 10% of all of the waste that would be going to landfill, Shoalhaven are actually using, manufacturing a PEF product and keeping that out of landfill. And if Peter Windley is here, and I hope he is somewhere, yep, there he is, up the back. So Peter's the waste manager at Shoalhaven, doing an amazing job. If you want more information, see him. And the other bag in a bin that I want to just briefly talk about is another project that is addressing the issue of soft plastics and the collapse of REDcycle. So IQ Renew and the Kirby program have undertaken trials for about 5 years to try to perfect, can you get the community to put soft plastics in a bag, in a bin, and can the MRF get it out, and what's going to happen in terms of the fear factor of it's all going to get contaminated, or people are going to put it in loose and it's going to increase the contamination in the commingled bin. So we know that the average red bin has about 7% soft plastics by weight, and it's a huge amount by volume. So the Kirby program that has been going for some time now and has 4 councils signed up to it, you basically use any device, you go to the Kirby Rewards site, you download a QR code, you place it on the Kirby bag that you get, and if it's not in a Kirby bag, basically the MRF deems it to be contamination, and they're having about 1% bag breakage as opposed to about 10% that was with the textiles, and I think that's an absolute factor about the weight of the bag.
Welcome to IQ Renews.
Sorry. So the average bag weight is about 550 grams. Most householders are recycling every fortnight. Currently, the MRF at Summersby, which is operated by IQ Renew, is processing about 6,000 bags per week, and that's equivalent to 2 to 3 tonnes of material. And they've got about 40,000 active users across 4 New South Wales councils. So far, they've diverted about 350 tonnes of soft plastic from landfill, and IQ Renew, I think, are to be congratulated because in the post-wash-up of the REDcycle collapse, they've invested and built the first soft plastics engineered commodity facility at Taree on the mid-north coast, which mechanically sorts and separates material. And I think the easiest way to let you understand what that looks like is to watch the video, and IQ Renew have got to stand out the front as well. And I'm not on their payroll. I just think that those that invest and innovate need to be recognised for the effort, because as Garth said, nothing in this industry is easy. It all requires a damn lot of hard work. So well done to those that are trying to look at new things, which is what we need to all learn from.
Welcome to IQ Renew's Industrial Ecology Hub, located on the mid-coast of New South Wales.
My name is Annika Stott and I'm IQ Renew's Group Project Manager. We're here today at our SPEC facility. SPEC stands for Soft Plastic Engineered Commodity. This is Australia's largest purpose-built facility for processing post-consumer soft plastic waste. Come inside, let's take a closer look. This is our receival floor, where soft plastics like food wrappers, cling film and plastic bags arrive at the facility through collection programs such as CurbCycle and Return to Store pilot programs. Once here, the material is lifted onto a conveyor belt and it begins its journey to be transformed. This is advanced mechanical recycling in action. The first step is sorting. Here, the soft plastics go through a number of stages to be sorted into different polymer types. We use magnets to extract metals from things like citrus fruit bags. Our optical sorters are trained to identify and separate materials based on their specific plastic types, such as LDPE, HDPE, and polypropylene. Materials with high chlorine content like PVC are extracted here. The material is then sorted into different streams, which gives us various grades of plastic. For example, over here, this clean and clear white fluffy stuff is purely LDPE. Next, the material is thoroughly washed and dried, and from here it can be extruded into flake or pellets ready for reuse. Our extruders process up to 750 kilos of resin pellets per hour, turning the sorted material into a new product, resin pellets, which can be used by injection molders, chemical recyclers, it can be blown back into film. The possibilities are endless. Let's have a look at the resin pellets.
We produce 3 main products here at SPEC: shred, flake, and pellets. These can be purchased by manufacturers to create new products. Some of our recycled material is used immediately to create products like fence posts, buckets, bags, boards,
grids, and so much more. The benefits of using recycled soft plastics are real. We are showcasing what is possible in soft plastic recycling. We're supporting Australian manufacturing and we're creating local jobs.
At IQ&U, we're leading the way in soft plastic recycling.
Making a real difference for our environment and our community.
Join us. The time for action is now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Our last speaker for this afternoon is Rachel Walker. Rachel is the Head of Marketing and Communications at Community Resources. Rachel's going to talk about innovative waste management and social enterprises. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, everyone. Last session of the first day, I thank you to your commitment and dedication for staying through the course today. I hope I do this session a bit justice for you. Not a good start. No? There we go. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we are all gathered here today, the Gumbaga people, and pay respects to those elders past and present. And I do want to extend those respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. Community Resources is a national non-for-profit. We create jobs that care for people and planet. For nearly 40 years now, we have run some of Australia's largest social enterprises, focusing in majority on landfill diversion, recycling, and reuse. As a social enterprise, our number one goal isn't to maximise profit, it's to maximise outcomes for people, planet, and communities, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So we know Australia is shifting actively towards a circular economy to address the growing environmental challenges, depleting resources, and economic sustainability. This shift is supported by national and state frameworks. We've heard a lot about that this morning, with some trepidation about whether we'll get there or not, but we have got that policy in place. It's a move away from the old linear model, the buy, consume, and throw away, and towards one that's built on repair, reuse, and recycling, and designing out waste. Councils or operators are being asked to achieve higher diversion rates, educate communities, and deliver measurable outcomes. But achieving these outcomes isn't just about what we do, it's about how we go about doing it. Waste has value, and waste is not worthless. When unlocked properly, it flows back into the environment and the community. So the way we deliver diversion really does matter. Here's the truth. You can build all the infrastructure you like, but without transparency, community connection, and real accountability, we risk dressing up old waste systems with new branding. And that's where social enterprise comes in. It's uniquely placed to deliver the circular economy outcomes that councils and communities and industry are really aiming through value-aligned, people-based, local community-focused models. At Community Resources, we've seen firsthand that a social enterprise model can deliver real measurable circular economy outcomes at scale. So looking at Community Resources, in the past 3 years alone, we diverted over 60,000 tonnes of waste from landfill through reuse, repair and recycling across our enterprises, Soft Landing, Resource Recovery Australia, and Green Connect. And we deliver this impact without compromising on any operational excellence or reliability. So I want to show you how this plays out practically through two of our social enterprises today, Soft Landing and Resource Recovery Australia. So Soft Landing. Soft Landing is Australia's largest mattress recycler, part of Community Resources. It operates across New South Wales, Victoria, ACT, and WA. Last financial year, we recycled over 430,000 mattresses, delivering over 7,500 tonnes of waste from landfill, and recovering valuable materials like steel, but not just steel, but also timber and foam. More importantly to some, every mattress we process also creates meaningful employment for people experiencing barriers to work that may not otherwise been able to get work in a typical market economy. These people, former refugees, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the long-term unemployed, people with contact with the justice system, all these people are proud to be our colleagues. It's a model we have where landfill diversion, resource recovery, and social impact happen together. Our manual dismantling method is central to this impact, and this method is the one recommended by the Australian Bedding Stewardship Council, ABSC. Hi, Kylie. It allows us to carefully separate steel, foam, timber, and textiles. It achieves around 70% diversion through this accredited recycling methodology. And this has been proven to be one of the highest real recovery rates, genuine recovery rates in Australia for mattress recycling. We are actively working towards 100% diversion. We're looking at waste to energy for that. There's a bit more progress happening in WA at the moment. But landfill diversion is our real baseline. The real goal that we're really seeing is how to get the most value out of end-to-life mattresses. And to us, it's about moving materials as higher up as that waste hierarchy as possible. Last year, we did a consumer mattress recycling survey. We had over 1,000 consumers around Australia take part in this survey. We found some very interesting results. Why we wanted to do this is we think that a real part of real landfill diversion comes from community engagement and for making it easy for people to get involved. So we were really interested to hear, well, what are people here? Everyone in this room has bought a mattress in however long. What did you do with it? How easy was it to recycle it? We wanted to learn that. So we found, among some other things, and it is up on our website if you wanted to see the full report, that 93% of Australians are eager to recycle their mattress responsibly. But 65% hadn't used a recycling service before, but would like to. And 20% said they didn't recycle because it's just too hard and inconvenient for them. There was no viable option for them to do that. So we work hard to make it really easy for people to recycle responsibly through a range of methodologies, through council curbside collections, retailer partnerships, and drop-off locations, even grandiose-sounding mattress musters. We do a lot of initiatives to make mattress recycling really easy for people to access. And this work is led by people, not just machines, so the impact becomes human and much more easier for residents to connect with. And when communities understand that link, it drives real behaviour change, and that's what we're talking about. How do we get the community to change their behaviour and support this? This is what a place-based, people-first circular model looks like. We know that not everyone can come to a mattress recycling site, so we took a video camera to one of our sites. This is in Smithfield in Western Sydney, and just like to show you this.
We proudly partner with councils across Australia to deliver trusted service for mattress collection and recycling to local residents. As Australia's largest mattress recycler, we have the capacity, expertise and dedication to meet your needs while upholding the highest standards in quality, health, safety and environmental management. Last year alone, we collected over 430,000 mattresses nationwide and created employment opportunities for 288 people. As a registered charity and not-for-profit social enterprise, every mattress we recycle creates real positive change for people and planet.
Coming to work and I see mattresses on the streets. And when I come over here, I know that those mattresses are being brought here. When we recycle it, we take everything through the process. We actually know that we are doing a good job for the environment, for the community.
difficult for me because it's a visa and the language. My friend is working here, and they tell us, oh, Softland is good. They are helping refugees.
And that makes me feel really, really good being useful to the society and the community.
At the heart of this success is our manual dismantling process, the Australian Bedding Stewardship Council's preferred recycling method. Unlike mechanical shredding, manual recycling ensures materials like steel, foam, timber and textiles are recovered in the highest quality for effective recycling and reuse. And this hands-on approach delivers more than just environmental benefits. For every 23 mattresses we collect and recycle in a day, we create a job for someone who really needs one. By choosing Soft Landing to collect and recycle your residents' mattresses, you're investing in a proven industry-leading partner that delivers exceptional service. You're supporting people like Joseph and Hussein, individuals who've overcome challenges to find stability and purpose through meaningful work. Together, let's end mattresses in landfill.
The dancing cutter there, I had every Friday. I would just look at it in the afternoon because it would cheer me up. There's actually a fuller post we put up on Facebook about it. It's worth a hunt down, actually. Makes me smile. You can be that happy at work. Another community resources social enterprise is Resource Recovery Australia, which I'm sure many of you may know in this room. RRA operates across Australia to transform the way we treat waste. We deliver practical, people-first circular solutions through waste and recycling services, such as CRCs and transfer stations, weighbridges. There's a lot there on the screen. It's a very broad service offering. And we also operate Reviver reuse shops, so they're what people know as the tip shops, in partnerships with councils across 15 sites. Last financial year, RA diverted nearly 12,000 tonnes of waste from landfill, and we welcomed over 125,000 customers to our reuse shops. But just like Soft Landing, our impact goes beyond materials. We create jobs, deliver training, and actively engage communities. Rockhampton is just one of our best practice examples of a whole of site circular model that I wanted to talk to you about today. At the Lakes Creek Road facility, we run the Reviver reuse shop, CRC and transfer station together. Based on its success, recently we expanded to the Gracemere facility, running a second Reviver reuse shop, CRC transfer station and gatehouse. Our Rocky site consistently achieves record volumes of materials recovered and rehomed. This is place-based circular delivery in practice with the outcomes to prove it. So why does this model work? It works because we manage the whole site. The reuse shops, the CRC, and the transfer station. That means our staff can intercept valuable items before they're lost to landfill. At the same time, they're educating people. They're explaining what can be reused or recycled and why it matters. People really hunger for that information education, and if you're talking to someone really enthusiastic and passionate, you can't but fail to get caught up in that enthusiasm too, and that's again where that behaviour change in the communities can really stem from. The team is absolutely central to this solution. 90% of our staff have come to us with barriers to employment, but through training, they become passionate advocates for reuse, and their energy flows into the community. Our partnership also with Council is strong. We're not just a contractor, we're delivering our shared goals. Without the community behind this, the circularity chain is broken. We need to have them involved, actively working all together. The quotes on the screen that our contact Michael was kind enough to share with us show that Rockhampton Regional Council have endorsed this model as best practice. And there's a few quotes up on the screen. I'm not going to read them out. You can read them. This is what's possible when delivery people and policy all aligned together. I'm going to show you some examples of this working action within the community at quite a grassroots level. Okay, so we have a fast fashion day. Oh, I said it. I thought I was going to get mixed up with all those Fs. But this fast fashion day at Reviver, it was a really creative, hands-on way to bring the idea of reuse to life. So in partnership with Council, we hosted local high school students for a fast fashion challenge. Each group styled outfits from Reviver stock, showing students the possibilities of reuse. And they took their learnings back to school to run their own second-hand fashion shop. So again, we're teaching our young people to get behind this, to get excited about reuse and recycling, to see what's possible, and to do it in a way that interests, engages them, which is fashion for high school students. This is the fun part, hey, of our business. It's grounded, it's community-driven education, and our young people really embrace the joys, creativity, and satisfaction of what a circular economy can bring to us as a country. Depot Hand Wes is an example how people-centered models make circular systems stronger. Wes came to us after redundancy. His past experience didn't easily translate to new work, and he was finding it extremely difficult to find new employment. But it was the perfect fit for our team, with a passion for reuse and second-hand that really sprung out of him. Wes doesn't just do the work, he believes in the mission. He talks to customers, he shares his knowledge, and he helps people see value in what others might see as just waste. When you invest in people and your team is investing in the outcomes, the community feels it. And that's what drives real behaviour change. And that's what takes landfill diversion beyond infrastructure to connection and impact. Now, we're seeing why and how these models work in practice to drive circular economy outcomes, but what are the challenges to its scalability? So the challenges we're facing aren't unique to social enterprise. They affect everyone trying to deliver circular outcomes responsibly. From a systems point of view, we see a few areas. For example, we see extravagant environmental claims still being made. We've heard of greenwashing. Greenwashing has been going on for a long time and continues, but who's checking them? It's a real danger to the people who are doing the real work and doing some real successes. From an operational perspective, there's limited end markets for harder to recycle materials. We've talked about those. Reuse is often overlooked, seen as too hard, inconvenient, too costly. And in some regional areas, like where I'm from, where I live currently, it can be cost prohibitive to have some kind of solutions in place, so we dismiss it. Procurement is a really big piece here. Social enterprises meet the same standards any provider or operator must. We must deliver the same governance, value for money, reliability, safety, all of those things. But social enterprises also deliver verified environmental and social benefits. But these outcomes don't necessarily always count unless they're built into the procurement weighting of new contracts. So how do we break through these barriers to deliver real circular economy outcomes at scale? So what we think it will take to scale what works. Number one, visibility and oversight. Many of the right policies do exist. The focus should be on consistent application, more accountability, and smarter procurement. We need more oversight and transparency to reward what does actually work. Second, procurement must reward impact. Social enterprises like ours can deliver. We tick all the operational boxes. But as I've said, we also deliver the verified social and economic outcomes and benefits as well. Council and businesses shouldn't have to choose between impact and operational reliability. Social enterprise models can bring both. So what we're saying is, with social enterprises, you can tick all the usual boxes, but you can get more back. Third, delivery must be collaborative. You can't build community behaviour change from behind a gate, and you can't do it by yourself. Models like soft landing and RRA prove what's possible when service providers educate, engage, and empower residents as part of the process. Social enterprises like us are not asking for a handout. We're here to partner with government and industry to deliver systems that actually work. Because if you want to build a circular economy that lasts, it has to be built together. So to wrap up, today we've shown what it looks like when circular economy principles are put into practice in communities and every day. We've shown how landfill diversion can unlock value, rebuild trust, and deliver real jobs and community outcomes. We've shown that social enterprise delivers on environmental outcomes on all fronts without compromising reliability, governance, or value for money. But to keep delivering and to scale what works, we need the visibility and accountability. Environmental claims must be validated, and measurement must happen and be shared. And we need better procurement decisions and cross-sector collaboration. The system is shifting, you can feel it in the air, and who we choose to build it with will shape what it becomes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone, for keeping on time. We've still got 10 minutes to go, and that means 40 minutes until the drinks are on. We've got a couple of roving mics here, so I might just get our 4 presenters to come and take the 4 conveniently placed chairs, and we can take some questions from the audience. Just one quick note from the organisers. While you're thinking of questions, if anyone has driven a car and has parked it on the grass outside, if you haven't seen it this afternoon, it is looking pretty willing, and there is a good chance you might get bogged. The organisers are suggesting that you might want to consider leaving your car here overnight. There's less rain predicted over the next 12 to 24 hours, and take some alternative transport back tonight. Right, have we got any questions for anyone here?
Hi, Adele Misson from Outlook Australia. It's regarding the MRFs. With all of your, obviously, different waste streams, have you got the facilities to recycle those waste streams? So the back end from that. So does that make sense? Yep.
Yeah, look, yes, but I think that that obviously limits what you can recover, what's a recoverable product, but it's all got to start at the back end. And if there's not a market for it, then there's no point in trying to create something for it. So yes, there are markets, but there's definitely materials that we see at the front door that we don't have markets for at the back door, and hence why the residual that comes out of the facilities.
Can I state after that, is there markets out there in the world for those additional ones, but we haven't seen that in Australia? Do you know of?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of the niche areas, there are definitely examples where there's globally other systems that we don't have a lot of access to. Tetra Pak, gable top containers type material, springs to mind as something that there's not. It's quite challenging, but there are other markets in the world where there's more developed markets for it. I think a lot of them are relatively smaller volume type materials, but yeah, as you chase further and further recovery, each of those little material streams becomes more and more important. So yeah.
Excellent. Another question? Oh, grab that one first.
Hello, I'm Kylie. I'm from the Australian Bedding Stewardship Council, but I actually had a question for you, Anne, around the export of textiles. Has there been any, or have you or any of the other sort of consultants in this space done any foreign end market verification on the textiles that go overseas and how they're used?
So I think Peter Allen in Victoria is the absolute guru of following the pathways of textiles internationally. So it's really a question for Peter. I haven't personally, but I know Peter's done a lot of work.
Thank you.
Maybe, I don't know, is Peter Windley still in the room? No, he's not. Okay. Because I was going to ask whether Peter had done any validation on where the materials were that they were exporting. They're going to India and they're coming back as materials, but I didn't know whether he'd done any work on that.
Hello, I'm Doug from Tamworth Council. So just talking about more regional approaches to resource recovery, and we talked about the high cost of, the installation of recycling facilities and the impact on regional areas. How do you see that future of being able to recover more in these outlying areas?
I might make a comment first. I said this morning that one of sort of South Australia's differences, it's basically Adelaide and not much else, with all due respect to the else. I guess, and then, probably at the other end of the extreme, when you look at Queensland, the regional centres in Queensland, are sort of pretty big and pretty spread out. And obviously, there's parts of Victoria, New South Wales and WA that have that as well. I think as part of Queensland's waste strategy review at the moment, for example, industry is going to have a serious discussion, and industry, again, very broadly, about whether the 80% target should be differentiated in the regions as just not being realistic, and whether South East Queensland should be more like an 85 and the regions might be whatever is realistic, 60, 65, 70. So I think, my view is it is harder in the regions. Garth can talk to Mount Isa. He gave numbers earlier, and they're pretty ugly, to be honest, probably from a cost perspective. But things are definitely harder at different scales. And then, again, we spoke levy this morning, but regional areas, you're also talking regional levy rates, which are lower, which also make things harder. So smaller facilities, less volume, lower levy rates, fewer markets, longer transport distances. Yeah, it's harder.
Look, I wouldn't. I think there's still definitely a role for regional facilities. I think that having specific, one-off little facilities is going to be really, really hard. Just up the road here, the Chindra MRF, we service the northern region, the Northern Rivers region. It's a 30,000 tonne facility. That's a fantastic facility where we've got the volume to be able to invest in a lot of new kit as a major project underway there. Different to trying to do it on 2,000 tonnes, which is that's real hard work unless someone's very, very, very supportive of other outcomes. The answer, I think, is better transfer facilities. And that, gives more options as well. It gives more options as to where you can go to. I don't understand, and I've said this many times to metro councils in Sydney, I don't understand how you get yourself in a position where you can't even move your own material to, you've only got the option of something that's around the corner. I think it's silly. I think if you're planning ahead, you need to be going, okay, well, how do I access the different facilities that are going to be available that I'm going to need to service the community? And I think, having good transfer points, and there's degrees as to what can happen at that transfer point in terms of pre-preparation. There's no point sending me contamination if you can, decontaminate material and then transfer that. That's a great idea. What's the mix of what do you do in the region versus what do you do at a specialist facility? I think that's where the interesting conversation lies.
Got time for maybe one or two more questions? All those hands are staying down. Oh, one more over here. Joe?
Henry, your fuel preparation plants and diversion to cement kilns is really spectacular, and the growth is really spectacular. And I have to say, it's kind of surprising to me that this hasn't happened. I mean, there's been cement kilns for a long time. There's been hard waste for a long time. You cracked this market and doing this fantastic job on it. Two parts. Why hasn't it happened before? And how is the capacity? Is there still demand for more of this stuff, or are you hitting the limit because there's limited numbers of cement kilns?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I mean, I said earlier there's only 4 cement kilns left in Australia. One's in Tassie, so that's sort of again, I'm just going to offend everyone today, I think, but that's hard to access is the polite way to put it. and 3 in mainland Australia. And the reason we've been doing it with Adbri, and it started off as a JV with Adbri 17 years ago, is it's a metro cement kiln. It's literally in the city or in the northern part of the city. They've had a strong waste levy and a strong momentum for a long time in this space. And so, the New South Wales cement kiln, Boral, were next. They're about an hour and a half from Sydney. And Cement Australia is sort of dabbling, but not done anything significant yet. That's in 6 hours from Queensland and from Brisbane, and Queensland didn't have any sort of levy till 2019, so we couldn't even think about building a plant there. And as I said, our plant's just opened there last year. Again, very, to Garth's point, and it's very challenging developing any asset in this sector. Our new fuel plant in Brisbane, which is basically a copy of our Sydney one, took 7 years. That's nothing thermal or complex like the Perth EFWs, but we had COVID, we had a builder go bust on us. There were things that just happen over the course of a project, and that's in probably the fastest approval jurisdiction in the country. It still took us 7 years. So, in terms of future growth in Australia, one of the reasons why we do export fuel and have a whole team based, in the Asian market. Is, for the 4 cement kilns here, there's 200 in Asia. And so there is fuel demand there. Again, it depends on the country, but that also comes with, export risk and sovereign risk and things like that from an investment point of view. So there's a certain point where you potentially don't build another plant for that purpose, and you need to find other outlets. Like everything in our sector, incoming, processing, outgoing, you've got to have the markets wherever you're going to do it. So we have, there's 15 million tonnes of C&D, C&I still going to landfill in Australia. Even if only half of that was dry waste, we could build a lot more fuel plants. It's about having the policies right and having the markets consistent.
Excellent. I think we'll wrap it up there. Would everyone join with me in thanking Anne, Henry, Rachel and Garth?